If you've ever wanted to know how to make a piece of decoupage paper like this appear completely seamless over the front or the side of a piece of furniture, this is the video for you. So this week's video isn't necessarily start to finish process of a piece of furniture. You'll notice the piece has already had some work done to it. I'm going to show you how to blend a piece of decoupage paper to make it appear seamless on a piece of furniture. So this is a modern blanket box that I found very inexpensively on Facebook Marketplace. I gave it a very good clean, Dixie Belle's White Lightning cleaner, and then I've used 2 coats of Bond Emboss. That's going to eliminate any problems with bleed through. It's also going to give me adhesion for my paint to grip onto, because the finish was super glossy. It's like a modern glossy shiny finish. So I've used 2 coats of Bond Emboss, left it for 24 hours, and now it's ready to paint. So I want to put this decoupage paper, which is a brand new decoupage paper from Dixie Belle paint, I want to put it on the top of this blanket box, but you'll notice that it's a lot smaller. So what we need to do is to make that appear as though it's a complete image over the entire top by blending it in to the background using paint. So that is what I'm going to show you on this week's video. I'm going to do a voiceover for this, which is not unfamiliar. However, you might hear some background noise on this video. I've normally got peacocks to contend with in the background of my videos, but not today. We have children at home because of the 6 weeks holiday. They've also got friends around playing. I've also got builders here, which are incredibly loud, banging and drilling. So if you do hear any of that, just pretend you didn't, because this is the 4th time trying to record this voiceover, because I feel like I'm losing my mind at the moment with all the background noise, and I'm never going to get it where I can just do a voiceover and not pick up on anything. So it is what it is. The first thing to do when you're trying to do this effect or any decoupage is undercoat in white. So I'm using Dixie Belle's Fluff. All of the colours that I'm using today are chalk mineral paint shades. The reason I'm using Fluff is because the coverage is fantastic. You can just see 1 coat and I'm done. Don't want to have to do several coats of white to get any coverage. And the other reason I'm using white, which I have explained before in other videos, but this video particularly demonstrates it well, because if you caught a glimpse of the decoupage paper at the start of the video, you'll notice that the background is incredibly dark of the paper, sort of dark, inky, bluey blacks and greys. Now, most people are tempted to try and match what they undercoat their decoupage paper with to the background of their decoupage paper. However, the problem there is that the decoupage paper will take on whatever's underneath it. So the background, if I was to undercoat this blanket box in a dark brown or black, the background would actually be fine of this paper because it's dark anyway. However, the lighter details on the paper, so the couch, the cow, and the paler elements in the sky would all become dirty and murky because they're going to take on that dark undercoat. So I always use white. White keeps the colours true to the colours that you see on the paper. It doesn't alter them, it doesn't make them dirty, it doesn't kind of murky the colours or anything like that. So always white. The next thing I'm going to do is tear off a jagged edge around my decoupage paper, because a jagged edge is much easier to blend than a straight edge. I also put a thin layer of satin clear coat down over the top of my blanket box. That's a top coat, but you can use it to stick decoupage paper down with as well. So to recap, we've done the base coat in white. I've then ripped the edges of the decoupage paper to make them jagged, and then I've applied a thin coat of clear coat onto the top of my blanket box and stuck my decoupage paper down. Now, if you wanted to get any wrinkles out, you can use either your finger or a little bit of cling film in a ball, and this technique also works really well as well. It's something that I've discovered quite recently. So all I do is put a little bit of plastic. This is actually the packaging for this paper. So I just put a little bit of plastic down over the top. And by the way, this is still wet. So my satin clear coat is still wet. I haven't left this to dry. And then I'm using an ink brayer or an ink roller just to kind of iron out any persistent wrinkles. The barrier just stops your paper getting damaged, and you can really kind of press on hard if you want to with your ink roller. It works really well at getting out wrinkles. And then the last thing I like to do is to seal your paper, although you don't necessarily have to do this. I just like to do it just to add a layer of protection. So once the clear coat was dry, we're on to the fun part now. And these fan decks that I'm holding up now are a really good way of getting your kind of colour palette. So if you don't have a clue about how to match your colours to the background, these true to colour swatches will probably help you. So I'm just holding up a few colours here, and then I grabbed the colours that I thought would be the best match with the background. Rather than list every single colour as I'm using it, because I kind of had a kind of few on the go at a time because I'm working on kind of a layered look, what I will do is make sure I list them all in the description below, and they're affiliate links, which means if you click on them and make a purchase, I do earn a small commission from each sale, but it won't cost you a penny more. So the first colour that I actually went in with is Coffee Bean. This is a dark brown because the background had lots of browns, some grey, some blue. So I'm just starting out trying to map out where my colours are going to go and trying to get a good match. The next colour is blue, obviously, and I'm just going straight over the top to kind of get them to melt together. Although at some points I did use a hairdryer to kind of blast the layers dry a little bit, just to kind of, so I could work the layers up. And I'm obviously I'm talking about this in a kind of broader technique. I'm not going to say, you know, I use this colour and I put it exactly here, because I want you to be able to watch this and then, you know, use it on any kind of decoupage paper that might not fit on the piece of furniture that you have in mind. So rather than say I'm using, you know, dusty blue and I'm putting it at the top, what I'm going to do is just talk more about the actual general technique. So once I've kind of mapped out the background colour, I went all the way around the edge with the darker colour because it kind of works well all the way around the piece. But then, as you can see at the top of my decoupage paper, it's a lot paler. It goes into like a more of a bluey, dusty bluey kind of colour, and I think that looks, you know, more like a moody sky. So I am kind of doing that stage next. So I'm taking a paler blue and I'm just going around the top. Now the most important tip, I think, when you're trying to blend your background of your decoupage paper into a piece of furniture is to make sure you take the paint onto your paper. So if you suddenly end abruptly where your paper starts, the eye is going to know where that line is, because obviously some of the colours are going to be very unique in your paper. So you want to make sure that the colours you use in the background, you take a little bit. Don't be scared to paint onto the paper. I'm not going to touch the cow or the sofa because that would just, you know, it'd be way too much work and it's not necessary. What we're trying to blend is the background only to make it look convincing, like a continuous piece of art or paper on the top of the blanket box, so it doesn't look like there's any harsh edges. So I am taking those colours well into the paper, and in fact right up to the cow in some instances, so that it just, the eye is, you know, kind of looking at those colours continuously, and it's not kind of one blue ending and another very similar blue starting. So there's absolutely no problem in taking some of those colours into the paper, and that's what's going to make it look a little bit more convincing. So this stage is really about just getting the colours down and mapping them out and kind of having a bit of a play and trying to do a bit of a colour match. It didn't take me long at all. I know I've sped this process up, but you don't have to really kind of hone in on the detail of this. And I just let this first kind of layer dry. Once it was dry, I could still see a little bit of a line where the paper ended. So I'm just going to take a 220 grit sanding sheet and sand away at that edge, and that's just going to help kind of blur the line a little bit as well. And then I'm just going to repeat the process. So again, I'm going in with my darker colour, to try and melt it into the paper, the background of the paper. I'm actually going over the top of Coffee Bean with a little bit of Midnight Sky. So the Midnight Sky is a really good one to use if you are trying to get a match for this paper, because it's not a true black. It's a little bit got kind of bluey grey undertones. So it works really well with this paper. I think it's probably definitely the best match for the kind of lower half of the paper. And then really it's just about kind of ironing out the detail of the top for me on this piece, and you can just keep playing around. So initially I wanted the sky that's lighter at the top to kind of be continuous right off the top of the blanket box. However, I quickly realized that the rest of the paper has got a vignette around it, which just means it gets darker around the edge, and I decided that it kind of didn't look right with so much pale right at the top. It was a bit kind of, it just didn't look right to the eye. So I just used a little bit of dark and went around the edge of the top as well. So with this, you don't need to be scared about going wrong, because you can literally just correct yourself. You can see here how much dark I put versus how it looked, you know, earlier with a lot more kind of pale sky towards the top. So it's just about playing around, and you'll notice I'm pausing and sitting back in between each kind of layer, because you need to make sure obviously it's looking right. Go away, make a cup of tea, come back to it, make sure you still like it, make sure the paints are drying down and staying, you know, on track colour wise. And then once you're happy with it and finish faffing like I did for quite a while, you can lock it in and seal your piece. So I'm using clear coat in flat for this. I also painted the rest of the blanket box in Midnight Sky, just because I wanted the focal point of this to be the top. I didn't want anything too kind of busy on the bottom half. Once my clear coat has been whacked on, I just like to quickly get a coat on before it's dry. Then I go back in with my brush and just smooth it out. It looks a little bit scary to start off with, but trust me, it dries perfectly fine. As always, here's a few close-ups of the finished look. I absolutely love this paper. I think it's so quirky and cool. I'll definitely be using it again. If you did want to grab this paper and give it a go yourself, I will link it with the rest of the products in the description below. And here's how the piece finished up. Thank you for watching the video. As always, I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I will catch you next time. Bye.